Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 go.
Hello, RailCats fans, and welcome back to another edition of the RailCats Talk podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Savetich, and we got a little bit of news. Nothing too crazy, except, we have a new play-by-play broadcaster, which, only took 3 months to figure out because the RailCats don't post of any kind of staff update that they have ever, which is fine, which I'll dive deep more into, hopefully, in a little bit. Later in the week. I have a couple things lined up, so I'm not going to spoil it to a certain extent. But Andrew Mild is from the region. He's from Crown Point. He is the new play-by-play guy, and looking at its experience, he has, I would say, more of your traditional broadcaster kind of bring up to a certain extent, unlike Ryan Zimmerman, who really wasn't really looking into it and then kind of fell into it and has gone from there. And I think the similarities between the two, I think, Ryan brought a very different aspect of like the storytelling portion of broadcast and the real connection between the players. And the one thing I'm interested to see with Andrew is, what his connection is going to be like to the players that don't necessarily speak English. I know that Ryan really dove deeper into rekindling his Spanish-speaking skills to kind of connect with some of the players. So I'm interested to see when I do talk to Andrew, which is in the setup, is in the work. So I know that probably if most people listen to the minor league reporting, which is This Week in the Association with Rob and Kevin, obviously you would know that Andrew was on there for a little bit and kind of spoke about his bring up, or not necessarily bring up, but like the journey that kind of led him to the RailCats, which I'm hoping to get a little bit more in depth. Like, obviously this is going to be the interview with him when I do it is going to be, I want him to kind of talk about himself, and that's the one thing that I took away from the interview with Rob and Kevin was he's not that type of person that's going to put himself on a silver platter necessarily, like to make himself bigger or better than everyone else is. So that kind of leads in a little bit of why we may not have heard something. But he also did mention the new marketing director for the RailCats, which I need to look up real quick. But I think it was just one of those like that's why it really wasn't brought up to out there. But like I said, I think he's going to. And the one thing that I take away that is really that I'm really going to enjoy, especially when I dive deeper into him with this, is one thing I kind of want to get into it, was something that, that was my fear, that we were going to get a broadcaster that was going to be someone that was just going to be starting out and was going to be very mundane, kind of like Lake Country. If you ever listen to Lake Country's broadcast, they're pretty green in their aspect, and they are just mostly using it for a stepping stone. And I'm, granted, I think Andrew, I'll ask him if it's online or offline, if it's going to be a stepping stone kind of gig, which is fine. Obviously this is what we want. We want someone to have a stepping stone, but also give that aspect of what it's like to be a home broadcaster. And that's one thing he said. He said the home run call for Gary should be different than the home run call for, say, a Chicago Dogs, home run, or whatever the case. So, like, the calls should be different. And I think I think he's going to be more of a homebody, which I really appreciate, because it's easy to me, it's easy to be excited for both sides of the ball versus giving the home side that hometown feeling, which sometimes takes a little bit of practice maneuvering, because you have to be passionate about the team that you're broadcasting. It's an individual. It's not nationalized. It's not like it's Matt Yazel doing, this a special game of the week or whatever the case may be. It's, this is the guy that's going to be the home broadcast. So when I put the home broadcast on, I expect to be able to tell you who scored and who didn't by not even guessing the players, or the case may be, and that portion of it. So I'm excited to see, Andrew talk about that he wants to be a homebody, and from being from the Crown Point area, and he grew up going to RailCats games when they were in their prime, when they were doing things well. So like, he's already coming back and being that experience, and him being in the Atlantic League last year with the Southern Maryland Blue Crabs, I think that'll give a little bit more excitement, and he's going to bring that excitement. He's going to bring those big calls when it does come along. Just listening to some of his audio, home run calls, just big plays, the big moments. Like, he's going to step up to the plate and give you the big moment, what it should be. And I think transitioning from Ryan to Andrew, I think it's going to be a smooth transition. I think that we're not going to have a hiccup in our broadcast. And really, the RailCats really haven't necessarily had terrible broadcasters throughout the years. Is it Dan Vaughn, who's with Sioux City now? I know he was a RailCats broadcaster for a little bit. I know before Ryan was Max Kelton. I didn't really listen to much of Max, but when I did listen to him, he was very intriguing, or very in depth with the fans, especially like Mixler and stuff like that. He was very good at reading those, kind of interacting with the fan base off that one. And then, I think Ryan's first year, he was still strong, but his second year, he was even stronger, and he was that type of player to bring that kind of atmosphere. So I'm just interested to see that the questions really that I want to get with Andrew are more or less what kind of, what is he going to bring, just not inside the broadcast, but what are we going to get anything special outside the broadcast? I know like Max Kelton did a lot of like podcasty-ish stuff, interviews, stuff like that to kind of get more in depth with things. Ryan, not so much. But it's just different aspects of different avenues, and I think with Andrew having a really strong background in baseball, it's really going to help out, learning the game. If people are newer to the game, he's going to know more about the in-depths of baseball, which I think something Ryan was learning, and he was very good at it. I just think that, Andrew, this is his passion. Baseball is going to be his passion. That's what he's going to strive for. So it's going to be interesting to see what they compare the two, and what he's going to bring outside of just the broadcast. What is he going to bring on the social media side? What is he going to bring as far as, that kind of stuff? So I'm interested to see that. I like I said, I think it's gonna be a smoother transition. I don't think there's going to be anything too crazy. I don't just listening to some of his calls, he's going to give it his all, and he's going to bring excitement to the game. So I would really recommend this year, even if you were at the game, get a headphone, pop a headphone in, and listen to Andrew give the play-by-play of the game, because I think he's going to bring more excitement. Yeah, I know, like, obviously, if you're listening on a Mixler or you're watching on AATV, like, it's going to be a delay, but just being able to listen to the call and really bring in the emotion of the environment, because you'll hear the crowd, you'll hear the reaction, then you kind of get a replay of the event behind the scenes kind of deal. So I'm interested to see how that's going to all stem out. Then going into some just front office updates here. It looks like we have David Clark as the stadium operations. These are new people that I see. Andrew Mild, obviously, is the broadcaster. Dion Witherspoon, marketing manager. Jeff, I'm not even going to pronounce his last name. Or is it Pasquale? Is the food and beverage manager, and Noah Harden, head groundskeeper, which I'm still confused because Noah Simmons is up in there for assistant general manager and head groundskeeper. So I'm interested to see on that portion of it, what's going on that portion of it. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. I don't know. But going into the signing that we had, which was a bit of a surprise for me. I wasn't expecting to see this athlete or this player back in Gio Diaz, who broke the single season franchise record for stolen bases in a year. I believe the previous record was 32. He broke it at 33, and in total had 37. So I'm interested to see him back. That like this roster, it's going to be very hard. Like I thought last year was going to be hard for Lamar Rogers to figure out like what the lineup should be. This year is just looking like, hey, I've really settled into this role and I know what I'm doing now, and I'm bringing that veteran presence, and bringing Gio in is going to give you so many different options with him. I expect him to. It wouldn't surprise me if he plays all 100 games, even if he just plays 99. I could imagine him playing all games. And the reason this is a big surprise is because he did play in the Mexican League. So like I don't know how that's all going to stem. I don't know how that works. I'm in the works of working something out with him. I did reach out to him, say congratulations, thanks for coming back, blah blah blah, and he basically he basically said, I think he's found his game better. He was just trying to make a name for himself in Mexico, and it really didn't work out the way he was expecting to. But he's excited to be back, to prove himself even more on that front of things. So what we see with Gio is obviously he was first in batting average, first in stolen bases. He could play anywhere you need him to be. He's just an electric player to watch. He's that type of player that just wants to prove himself. It's not so much of it's one of those like when someone asks you to jump, sometimes people will say, well, how high? He just jumps. Like, what I'm saying? He's just one of those players that, I guarantee you if Lamar Rogers looked at me and said, I really need you behind the plate today, he may just go behind the plate. Like I think he's just that kind of player that's your five-tool athlete that you could put him anywhere and he's going to play that with almost ease, let alone just the batting. Obviously he's not going to give you, he only had, 2 home runs, but he's not going to give you all those runs, but he's going to score 75 times. He played 94 games last year. He scored 75 runs. He had 115 hits. I'm pretty sure that was just looking. Yeah, he was first in hits. He's just going to be that overall batter that you're going to really want in your lineup. Just looking at some of the metrics that he had last year, the run created aspect was 54 runs, and that's killing it almost, just above Mariaga. He's just going to bring you some kind of he is just his ability to play. It's just so hard when you see a player that just plays with such heart and such passion and able to play multiple areas of the field. Sometimes you can't describe the talent that's inside of it. Like, there's just so much to his game that you look at the numbers and the power numbers aren't quite there, but he has the speed. He has the ability to play the field anywhere. Like, realistically, if it wasn't for Brian Torres, he should have been in the All-Star game, and he could have probably been one of the best second basemen in the league. And I granted, we had such a dominant duo up the middle with Lingual and Woodworth, and really with Woodworth being hurt and Gio being able to play that role there. And Gio was it was one of those, like, he was stepping into he was competing for a spot, but like that spot was always already solidified to a certain extent. Like, you weren't really going to move Woodworth. Yeah, like, Woodworth's numbers were necessarily down, but like you didn't need to move him from that spot because he plays a very good second baseman. Just his like offensive numbers were a little bit down, and there's more to that than meets the eye, which hopefully I can get a little bit more deeper into with with certain things. But that's, I'm just saying, Gio's ability to, okay, well, you don't. Second base is going to be your ideal place to be, but we're going to set you in left field, or we may put you in short. Like I remember sitting Gio's first game at second. I was excited to see him play, and I was sitting there, and I had a couple fans, sort of next to me, and this is why I'm one. I want to do the podcast and try to get more in depth in certain things and talk about player interactions and stuff like that, especially during the season, is because they didn't know Woodworth was hurt, and so it was just like, oh, why is Gio there? Why isn't Woodworth playing, or whatever the case may be? And at that point, Gio's first game, he was trying to do. He got his spot right, and he was just trying to do too much, and you could see that just the way his mechanics were a little off. I think he was trying to play outside of himself just because he had that opportunity. And with that opportunity comes a little bit of nerves and trying to prove yourself that you're the one that should be in that spot. And with that being said, the people next to me were like, oh, well, Woodworth would have made that play, or Woodworth would have done this. And like, they didn't understand, sometimes you get yourself put into a game and you're trying to do too much. But then like you found the capability, the ability to play, he relaxed, he learned, he didn't learn to play, he relaxed, he became himself, and he played within himself, and he became a lot better ball player. And it just proved, I think that was one of those that it fell into, realistically, who should have probably been at second all year, but probably should have been Gio. But I get that you don't want to necessarily throw you don't want to not have Woodworth there because he was there for so long. It was just one of those situations where Gio was just offensively was a lot better than what you were getting from Woodworth. And, granted, on top of the injuries and stuff like that, but like last year, I think the issue with like the roster construction was there was so many spots that were strong that you couldn't necessarily rotate people in and out, versus the areas that were a little bit weaker. Like the strong areas, there wasn't enough to kind of go around, and the weak areas you were just kind of have to play with to a certain extent. Like, I would say probably behind the plate was a weak spot that the RailCats had. You were strong at first, you were strong at third, you were not super strong in the outfield. You could have, as far as like when you look at, how should I say, strong versus like actually playing the field, I would say the strongest positions was up the middle and probably first base. And then in the outfield, obviously center was, but left and right could be interchanged. Catchers interchanged, third base was interchanged. First, when you look at it from a fielding perspective, now batting perspective, your entire outfield was a lock. Your first baseman was up and down, in and around with Abbott, Tapia, and then you bring in Valero, which solidified that. Third base was a little bit up and around, catchers up and around. Short was short. There was nothing really until Lingua was moved on. There was nothing. There was no. Obviously, you would have Gio, but like I just think that the connection up the middle was so strong that Gio was that odd man out, but you still wanted him in the lineup. And then with Woodworth, so like that was a strong area. The outfield was strong. So like when you just look in the entirety of the offense, it was hard to like maneuver people. Like you could tell where the weak points were, but like there was no depth behind it to kind of like replay if someone's struggling to replace it. And I just think like with this year's roster construction, what we have so much more besides catchers. But I think I think with the catchers we'll be fine, especially with Quintana back there. I mean, Noriega, like I said, I'll have to dive a little bit deeper, but like just what uh, Quintana was able to do last year with Cleburne makes a big of a difference. But like when you look at like the roster now, how many people are sitting in this roster, and you go, wow, your outfield, you have really three more players than you had at the beginning of last year. The infield, you have plethora of people to I mean it's just gonna be a bloodbath. Like the infield, this is going to be such an intriguing year to see how, and I really wish that we get a little bit more in depth with like the spring training aspect of it, just because I really think it's going to be hard. How are you going to decipher who's going to play where? Like you have Basabe, Gio, uh, Perez, Sierra, like those are going to be like up your middle kind of guys. But like I really thought like Basabe was going to be like probably the lock at second or short. Now is it he's going to be the lock at short, or is it going to be Sierra, or are they, or is Basabe or Sierra out gonna outdo Gio, and he's just gonna have to find him spot. But I just think with Gio coming back that like he's just solidified as the second baseman. If he wants to move over to short, the up the middle is for him to decide what he wants to do. Then after that, then you plug and play. Like where are you gonna put people here or there? Third base, you're gonna have Gonzalez. You're gonna have Contreras. You can even put Valero over there. Like that's a 3-man rotation over there. Like what are you gonna? You have Backley who can play at at first. So you have a 4-man rotation there. You have to have a DH role somewhere. You're looking at the outfield. You got Carlos Rincon who's gonna give you the power. You got Carlos Machado who's newer. Del Valle, Castillo, Decker, Mariaga. Like who? Like I just think that with the amount of players that he's bringing in, it's going to be crazy. And really, when I talk with Andrew, because Andrew did talk about when he was with this week in association with Kevin and Rob, he talked about talking with Lamar, and I think they're supposed to have some kind of interview go out. I haven't seen it, but once that comes out, I'll definitely watch it because it's going to be intriguing to me, obviously, and everyone should watch it. Like, that's the part of being a fan, is just learning as much as you can. And this is just one of those situations where I think Lamar is finally figuring out what you're going to need in this league, and he's filling those roles. I think with like a little bit of lesser of the roster restrictions, I think the only thing that might hurt them, like I think right now, I think you have to have at least 3 rookies on the team, and they're at a minimum of 3. And that's Vitriago, Decker, and Contreras. Like, okay, so if that's going to be your 3 rookies that you're going to bring on, I'm fine with that. Like, and you only have really 2 classified veterans, and that's Pinto and Sanbria. Like, those are you're going to be your veterans, but a lot of them are LS2 or LS3s and LS4s, which I think they lowered that a little bit. Like that's just something, you don't know the difference between the roster restrictions and stuff like that. But kind of going back a little bit at Gio with like the Mexican League, like that was just I don't know how that stuff works. Like I had a feeling like there was a potential that he could come back, just because like you've seen it with some of the players. I think Sermo was one of those players that was like loaned back to Cleburne. So I don't know, like I'll have to ask him about like how that transition went, how that worked. But this it's hard to say that Lamar Rogers, and you could probably throw Anthony in there as well. Like I said, I don't know how you have some places where it's like the manager and the GM are working together. You have some places where it's just the coach and the GM just kind of works like the day-to-day operations like that. That was why I was so intrigued. I wanted to get Anthony on, but like it never, after email, after it was like, it's like you're getting ghosted by like your ex-girlfriend or ex-boyfriend or whatever the case may be. Like you're just trying to keep like that conversation that candle lit, and it never happens, and you just kind of like get faded away from it. So that's kind of what happened. I was really hoping to get Anthony on, because I wanted to get Anthony on, talk about the day-to-day operations, get the better idea of like the front office, and then kind of leak it into, you know, Lamar Rogers and getting in the players and stuff like that. But I'm gonna have to go the reverse way around, because I have things set up, and I know I should say I know at least of two that I have set up. I have Andrew Mild, who's going to be on, and I also have Gio Diaz that's going to be on. Like, I have those two people locked down. I'm working on another one. I'll probably work on some more, but there's another one that's in the talks. I'm not going to not until I have some hard facts behind it. But those are what I'm planning on bringing in to the podcast and getting this thing, because the opening, you know, the season's right around the corner. Like, it's coming up. We're getting at the time I'm recording this, happy Easter. So but you know, we have to get through the whole month of April, couple weeks through May, and we're right back on it. So like, it's coming. It's slowly but surely coming. You could feel it in the air. I stepped outside, I think it was yesterday, and I went, ooh, this feels like springtime baseball weather. And my wife even goes, I would enjoy a baseball game today. She don't like baseball that much. But that's beside the point of what I'm getting at. It's one of those situations where when I'm looking at this roster, I'm just really excited for it. You know, this it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard to say this team can't. Well, this team should make the playoffs. It's gonna be see how far they're gonna make it into the playoffs. We'll have to see. We'll just have to wait and see how the season rolls itself out. So yeah, I think that'll wrap it up for me. Be sure to follow me on social media at RailCats Talk. Website railcasttalk.com, all that good stuff. YouTube, Spotify, mostly all that good stuff. But yeah, I'm looking for bigger things, and hopefully with those interviews that are going to be coming into fruition, it's not going to be like I'll probably spread them out, or however the case may be. Like, I'm planning on this week doing it, so I only need time to edit it and stuff like those. The interview ones I like to really take my time with and really edit those, because those are the more important. I'm not saying that like what I'm doing, the quote unquote filler episodes aren't important, but like that's where I really want to spend the time to make sure that the people that come on the podcast are represented better than me just throwing something together. Like, I'm getting better at trying to edit things out, especially like, I don't know if you can tell, but like after the past couple months, like I've really been like trying to do these. This is one thing that's kind of like led me away from doing this. I know I was just going to my outro, but this is just how that's what it's just going to. But what led me away from kind of doing podcasts necessarily was because every time I would get on, I'd start coughing, just because I have like I don't know, it's allergy season, post-nasal. This has just been going on for months. And it's one of those deterrents away from actually doing it, because like you just keep coughing, and it's just like, it's no fun to sit here and try to talk for a half hour or get something going, and you're just constantly coughing and sneezing, and you have to go back and edit it. It used to be where I could just go through and not have to worry about editing anything, because it was close to, other than my ums and uhs and this and that, I was able to ignore all that and move on. But now with the coughing, I have to like stop and really listen, and so I'm doing a better job at that one. But like when it getting into the podcast, like with the actual interview portions of it, I want to be able to make sure that those people are represented, because they're guests on my show. They're taking time out of their day to come and do a Zoom meeting to talk about, you know, baseball. So like, I want them to be represented better than I would kind of represent myself, because they are the guests. You know, it's like the guests in your house, that kind of stuff. But got off sidetrack. I was wrapping everything up, so I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, rest of your evening, whenever you're watching this, and go Cats.
The 0-2. Swing and a miss, strike three. Wrap this one up in green and white.